Hey everyone, my name is Nikhil. I'm the founder and CEO at Future AGI. Future AGI is an end-to-end developer platform to help AI teams to prototype, ship, and observe modern AI apps reliably. I would first like to start the session with thanking everyone for joining today's sessions, where we are talking about some of the most famous AI failures, why they really happened, what we can learn from them, and how smart evaluation techniques can help you avoid such risks. We are really excited to deep dive into AI evaluations and why it is critical and what real innovation in here in Future AGI that we have done, which can actually help you, solve that bit for you. A lot of you who have joined might be thinking and also might be working on AI agents. That's the buzzword right nowadays. So, but how can we shift that and how can we really see how they're helpful and what's the real accuracy of them in real world? This is the whole session is about that. We'll also have a hands-on session on one real use case that everyone is working on, and I hope everyone will take something from the session. So yeah, let me just introduce Future AGI first, our vision. So we envision that SaaS will be whole or software will be replaced by these AI agents, and there's new kind of software that is coming, and we want to accelerate that journey. We want to develop all these tools which can actually set you apart and make real world application really fast. Yeah. I'm joined with one of the brightest team members that we have in Future AGI, Rishav. Rishav, over to you. Why don't you give your introduction?
Thanks, Nikhil. Super excited to be here today. I think it's going to be a very fun, very insightful discussion for everyone.
Yeah.
Thanks everyone for joining the call. I am Rishav. I'm an applied scientist here at Future AGI, where, as Nikhil has already mentioned, we are building an evaluation and observability platform to help AI developers and AI companies ship their AI applications into production faster, but more reliably, and also to have a robust evaluation over their AI applications. Before this, I was at Microsoft working on exactly the same things, where I was trying to build evaluation frameworks for a bunch of different generative AI models and use cases so that we can have a holistic view of how these models and applications are performing before they are shipped to our end users and end customers, right? And I am a core and a big proponent of evaluations, because only if we can measure how our models and applications are doing, then we can improve them. But the core concept of any AI application should be evaluations. Okay, cool. So I guess I'll share my screen and we can get started. Cool. So the first question that comes in, why has evaluation suddenly become so important? And my opinion on this is that it's not sudden. Evaluation was already very important in the age of traditional ML as well. But there, the evaluation was much simpler. We were living in the times of just measuring accuracy or F1 score, and that was it. But as these generative AI models are evolving and their capabilities are evolving, so does our evaluation also needs to evolve with them. And that is why it has become relevant in the current time, because these generative AI models are very non-deterministic in nature. We do not know what the output is going to be. But in the traditional ML use case, the outputs were really constrained. So we didn't have to worry a lot about evaluation. So evaluation has always been very important, but it was much simpler. Now the evaluation has to keep evolving with how our generative AI models are evolving every day. We look at some high profile AI failure cases and like what it costed to the companies, just to set some base for why evaluation is important if it's not already clear. One of them was a very infamous case for Google Bard, where during a live demo, when asked about James Webb Telescope, which is such a widely spoken about topic, it gave very factually incorrect answers. That led to a lot of reputational and financial damage for Google and Alphabet. The another such case is that of CNET, where they were trying to use AI to write certain content pieces. For any journalism platform, what's most valuable is their fact checking or fact vetting. But these AI content pieces had a lot of factual errors in them. They hallucinated a lot of content, again, causing a lot of damage in CNET's reputation and finances. Now, I am guilty of using tools such as ChatGPT or Cursor in my day to day work just to enhance my efficiency. And I guess a lot of you joining this call today must also be using these tools. If you're not, I would highly suggest that you should start integrating these tools into your daily workflows. But what I would say is to have an oversight. Don't always trust the output that these tools are giving. So, what happened with a couple of lawyers in New York? They tried using ChatGPT to write certain filings for a court hearing, but again, these court hearings that the filing had filed, the submission had, they were completely made up and non-existent. So these lawyers had to pay hefty fines when the court, found about this. And we are just scratching the surface with these sort of AI failures. There are many more, such as Meta's Galactica or the Microsoft Bing Chat, which were causing issues when users were interacting with these, and the tone of the responses returned by these AI applications was very toxic or very angry in nature, which did not sit well with the users. So Gartner did a study. They with the current AI applications that are in place, they divided them into several categories. Now, the current AI applications is not just the LLM model or the generative AI model itself. It includes a lot of things to bring together an AI application. It can include certain agentic workflows where you have maybe thousands of different styles of prompting that you want to choose from. Then it might be integrated with some sort of RAG workflow where you're retrieving certain relevant documents, feeding it as chunk to your prompts, and then getting the relevant responses, right? And finally, there are these different models, be it OpenAI or Anthropic or many other open source models as well. At each of these steps, there are several possibilities for things to go wrong, right? And that is why Gardner did a comprehensive study, and they figured out that these all these different categories have different costs attached to them, which is still very high in number. These It takes a lot of money to build such AI applications which are robust, and then on top of that, they'll have certain recurring costs just to maintain them. But this also overlooks when these AI applications fails and cost a lot more money in financial damages to these companies. Therefore, they predicted that by 2025, due to improper evaluations in place, 30% of these generative AI projects will fail. And people will probably start moving towards traditional ML again because that is much more predictable in nature. To overcome these, we need to move towards smarter evaluations. Now, when I say smarter evaluations, I want to stress on the fact that these evaluations should evolve with how our AI landscape is evolving. Right? We cannot depend on traditional metrics anymore, such as accuracy. We need to have a holistic understanding of each of these different components in the AI lifecycle so that we can make more robust AI applications and we know in real time where our AI applications are failing. I'll pause here for a bit and check with Nikhil if he wants to add anything here from his own experiences.
I think, yeah, that's your ROI when you're developing these applications, your ROI justification is very important, just like that has been shown, right? So when you are putting money into that, it should basically works, right? So evaluation is the in-between layer which make its work. We have seen with a lot of companies who are developing these foundation model, even small, LLM chatbots, they have spent months to just develop that. But even though when that goes into production, we have seen that miserably fail, and they're just calling that in 2 weeks of time because they didn't anticipated what are the kind of questions that user will ask, right? So this is I think that's a learning for everyone right now. So it's not just about the hype. We should, go beyond the hype and understand what is the enterprise or your business use case. Will this be applied for me or not, and how to take it forward? Yeah.
Okay. So we'll dive a little more into it, discuss evaluations a bit more in detail here. What are some like traditional AI evals that people have been using so far? Like one of the most basic metrics were like Blue and Rouge, which were used for like generative text models. These metrics would measure the overlap between the text that generative models produce and some reference text, and it would tell us the quality of the generated text with respect to the generated text. Now, as it is obvious, these metrics miss a lot of subjective evaluation. For example, what is the quality of the generated text? Does it sound good or not? Does it have any sort of biases or toxicity in it? For these subjective evaluations, we have for a very long time been dependent on human evaluations. Now, I have been a part of several projects which include human evaluations, and please trust me, it is an art. For people joining the call today, if you have dealt with human evaluations, you know how hard it is, right? Right from setting up the task to finding the right people to annotate, to setting up the task in a way you can get consistent annotations from these humans, and vetting them in a way that they provide consistent annotations, right? And these are also very resource intensive, resource in the sense of time they consume and the amount of money that they consume. This can get really expensive. Then there was a hybrid topic which mostly researchers were exploring, the concept of LLM as judges, where we can use certain LLMs to evaluate the generative AI outputs. Now here, this becomes a cyclical loop where LLMs are evaluating themselves, and therefore they're bound to have certain blindfolds or certain loopholes in this whole LLM-based evaluation, where things can still go wrong. And not to mention that if you're already struggling with setting up your AI application, right, setting up this LLM as judge just becomes an additional hassle on top of that, which you might not ever be able to figure out. To sum up, why do these outdated evals do not work anymore? Firstly, as I said, how users are experiencing and using our end-level AI application is very different from the static snapshots on which they are tested, because these generative AI models are really non-deterministic in nature. You do not know how the user is interacting with them and how they can respond to their to these user queries. So the dynamic reality of how these AI applications are being used is really different. Then narrow metrics such as Blue and Rouge, they of course miss out on very obvious cases of subjective evaluations, therefore leading to very catastrophic errors in production. Now, how we test these AI applications within a very controlled setting within the lab is very different from how the end users are using the AI application in production, leading to extremely wild errors. Finally, for folks who come from traditional ML background, we need to move away from one and done mentality, right? So what we usually used to do was to train some, AI architecture, get the best accuracy at the time of training as possible, and then deploy it and forget about it. Maybe revisit it every 6 months when there is a new model that has come in or a new architecture that has come in. But otherwise, we didn't need to worry about it because the output it generated was very constrained in nature. That doesn't work anymore with the dynamic text that or any other modalities that these generative models can generate. And finally, with that comes a lot of contextual and ethical gaps. So now it has become increasingly important to evaluate for things like bias, toxicity, unfair outcomes, or any legal risk that these AI applications might lead to.
I think one of the things to mention over here, we have seen 80% of developers just vibe testing the application, right? So they have, let's say, 10 or 20 use cases, maybe 100 use cases, where they say, okay, I think it's working fine, and they just pray that it will work fine in the production. That's how it doesn't work like that, right? So maybe they are testing it with the internal team, sharing on a spreadsheet that the output looks fine. Trust me, it will fail in production. You need to test it on a very, very, very wider use cases. Um, in my previous work, we actually spent 6 months to get the data, right? Even though when we got, I think, terabytes of data to train the models, when we deployed it, it didn't work, right? We had a lot of data, to be frank, but it didn't work. So that's how important your production evaluation becomes. And that's how one of the important thing is, it's not like one and done mentality that we also had in software. So you can just write some if and else cases and you are done for the life. It doesn't work for AI chatbots at all, or any AI applications at all. Yeah. Yeah, Rishabh.
Also, in times of traditional ML, I used to think how bad is hyperparameter search, but with prompt engineering, I think hyperparameter search was much better.
Yeah.
Okay, so these were the problems so far, but what are the solutions to this? Firstly, as I said, we need to have like a continuous evaluation loop. We need to evaluate early and we need to evaluate often. And when I say evaluate often, I really want to emphasize that we need real time monitoring of our AI applications that are in production so that we can get real time sense of how these applications are doing. Then we need more comprehensive metrics. We need to move away from just measuring the accuracy. We need more robust metrics which can help us evaluate each and every component that goes into making the AI application. We need to test for safety, and of course, we need to test for the key performance indicators relevant to a particular business. We need to have more realistic testing scenarios when we are testing these AI applications within a lab setting. We need to do adversarial testing in a way. We need to stress test the system so that we can be prepared for when things go wrong in our production level environment. Finally, we need a feedback loop in real time to be able to figure out where the AI applications are going wrong and use the feedback from the user or the AI developers who are monitoring it in real time and quickly just iterate over that as quickly as possible. Okay. So as I mentioned, in the current day AI application, a lot of things come into play. It is not just training the model, but there are different things right beginning from getting the right prompt instruction to getting the right training and testing data, or even if you are using certain RAG based mechanism, so getting the context data for that. Of course, there are tens or hundreds of models to choose from, all coming from different companies, with and all have each having their latency, each having certain privacy issues, each having their own token pricing. So you want to be able to figure that out as well. And then you might be using certain agentic workflows. So multiple agents coming into play together to come up with a single response that the user sees. And finally, you must use some sort of a RAG mechanism or framework to get the retrieved right context before you answer the user's question. So all of these different things come into play to make one AI application, and you need to have a good sense of where how each of these components are performing, because one error comes at certain point, it will all trickle down further, right? This is where the future AGI platform provides an end-to-end service to help you evaluate your AI application right from your data creation and data testing, moving on to certain prompt optimization if you are testing certain different prompts or an agentic workflow, and finally to a real-time monitoring system where you have deployed your AI models or AI applications in production, and you want a real-time sense of how these AI applications are performing. For this webinar, we will mostly focus on the evals. So we provide a lot of different evals for all modalities, be it text, be it audio, video, images, and we provide evals for each and every component that can be there in the AI lifecycle. So data evaluation to testing different prompts and different agents, or having evaluations for your RAG, and doing certain safety evaluations for the generated text.
Yeah.
Nikhil, do you want to add anything before we move on to discussing a practical use case?
Maybe we can pause here for if anyone has any questions, we can answer that first. Yeah, guys, you can maybe have a few questions if you want. We can have one or two questions here. Okay, I think you guys can just type the questions. The next time that we pause, we'll take all them. I think Rishav, you can continue.
Okay, so for the practical use case, I have taken the case of a chatbot because that seems to be the rage right now. I have so many friends who work in the AI space, and their clients are all requesting them to somehow integrate an LLM-based chatbot for their particular use case, right? So I have taken this example where, of course, when we start to build out an AI application, we always focus on the data first, right? So this in the Future AGI platform, this is our data set section where you can upload your data and configure a bunch of different evals to see like where things are going wrong. And this is a collaborative view where different teams or subject matter experts can come in together. So you can imagine a product manager, an AI developer, or other people from different teams coming together and seeing how the data is really performing, right? So here we see a simple use case where there is a user query, that is the query that the user can put into the chatbot. The RAG chatbot was fed with certain documents, which were all the documents provided by the company, and the RAG framework would retrieve certain documents from all the provided documents based on the user query and use these retrieved documents to answer the user query. Now, the first level of evaluation, we use two different models to check which model is performing the best for our use case. Now, the first level of check should be whether my RAG is performing well or not, right? So there we have this evaluation called chunk utilization. What it essentially does is see how much of the chunk that was retrieved using your RAG framework is being used to answer the user query, right? So you can see in case of model 1, the chunk utilization is higher, and we also provide an explanation for each of these cases, why and how the chunk utilization is happening for each particular use case. And you can see that for model 2, the chunk utilization is much lower. That means it might be doing more hallucinations in the provided answer to the user. So ideally we want the chunk utilization to be higher, right? So the next step would be, of course, there are a bunch of different evaluations that you can configure on RAG itself. I will show them shortly. But once you have the user responses, you want the user responses to be safe, right? So you want to test the toxicity of the final responses. So you can see here, all of these cases have passed. So they are not toxic, which is good. Then we can evaluate for tone. So you can see model 2 shows some annoyance, whereas in model 1 we have it shows certain joy, surprise, sadness. So it is much more empathetic in nature to the user's queries. These are a few simple evals that I've configured here, but we have a lot more evals to choose from. So if we are talking about a RAG specifically, we have evals such as context retrieval quality. So just to check from all the documents, the chunks that were retrieved by our RAG framework, what is the quality of those chunks? Are they good or not? Whether the ranking of those chunks were good or not. Completeness is a very important query that metric that can be configured. It helps us measure whether the user's query was answered completely or not. And then we have more evals around safety, such as sexism, whether the response is sexist or not, whether it contains any private information about the user or the company, to help us, prevent any leakage of information. So we similarly we have a bunch of different evals, a lot of evals covering all the possible use cases. And apart from that, we also give you the possibility to set up your custom evals. So it runs in a way that you can set up your key performance indicators for your particular use case, and with an easy to add way through the UI, and all those evals will work for you.
Yeah. Just to add, like we have been working with a lot of clients which wanted to have full control towards these evals, right? So I think can you show that deterministic evals or the custom eval scenario? So there they wanted, you know what, these ready to made evals doesn't work for me. Can you create can let me allow can I go on your platform and create for my use case, right? So it can be as uh for example, summarization of a sales call. So did I get the number right from that sales call? Did I get the number right from any of that calls, right? So in this you can just define what are the things that you're looking for, and we have in-house train these as SLMs and agentic models, which can actually go and with very high accuracy can tell that the output that you're getting is correct or not. And they're very custom, so it looks at your data first and then gives you the answer rather than having a set of rules defined. So yeah, basically it's like very custom. You have any case for images, for audio or text, it can basically do that all things for you. Yeah, I think we can continue, Rishabh.
So once you have tested the data and you're happy with which model you want to choose, I would say, like the prompts that you were using. So I would say in this case, maybe you went ahead with model one because it does well on chunk utilization, it does well on toxicity, it does well on tone, right? Now you want to build an application out of it. So here in this Colab notebook, I've demonstrated some code of how a basic chatbot setting might look like. You might have like a LAN chain where you feed it the relevant documents pertaining to that particular use case, and you might apply some sort of chunking over it to retrieve the relevant chunks, and then you will have certain questions which the AI application should answer by retrieving relevant chunks and then providing an answer to the user. So this is a basic chatbot setting. On top of this, you can very easily configure our evals through the code itself. So here you can see that the same metrics that I showed you earlier, such as tone, toxicity, context adherence, all of this will work with the responses and the entire chain of different components in your AI workflow. And each of these aspects will be evaluated using our metrics or even any custom metrics that you would want to set. So once you run this, you can see here I had already run a few experiments just to check how this end level application is performing. So here the different version shows my iterative development that I did through the life cycle. So the version one was the worst, and then I kept iterating over it to improve a bunch of different things in this experiment. So if you go to the version one, which was the worst performing chatbot, you can see that it performed worse across all the metrics that we had configured. It had low chunk utilization, low chunk relevance, low completeness. That is how it could answer the user query. We can clearly see that it does uh, badly. So we had like a complex chain over here where a bunch of different agents came into play to be able to answer the user query. And a simple question like, what should I do if I forget my password? It says, I'm not sure, try the forget password feature. Of course, this is not how you want your chatbot to perform towards the end user. And you can see that the tone for each of these evaluations was not good. It shows some confusion. The toxicity has passed, but the context relevance was still quite bad. So we move back, and then I want to show you this choose winner feature, where you can configure different weights for how the importance of these different metrics should look like. I will give tone a very high importance, because we do not want the end responses to have like a bad tone or be toxic in nature. And then I'll configure my RAG based evaluation metrics to help me choose a winner out of all these different versions that I tried. And you can see that here, over the iterative development, it could figure out the winner based on the weightage I gave to the different metrics, and it chooses the winner for me out of all the different versions that I tried. So I just wanted to dive a little bit deeper into like what a good run looks like. You can see here that it has very high values for tone, low values for toxicity, high values for completeness, uh, and similar to what I showed earlier, you can see it gives a helpful response to the end user by telling us exactly where in the login page you should go to change your password if you've forgotten your password.
I think this
Cool.
screen is very important because, to be frank, we have this all these agentic frameworks that people are using. It's a black box for a lot of them, because they haven't come from they have come from a different background. And what really happens in that chain, what agent is doing, what tool calling is, what is happening, and why it is taking certain actions, that become really important when you're developing these chatbot application, any application for say. So this is actually, a very lighter version of that. So you have maybe 2 or 3 agentic decisions that have been made, but in a real world application, this can go really wild. Just think about like deep research, like it just goes off and do so. I think just run for 10 minutes or something, and just think like how those guys are actually debugging it, like which wrong decision that they take. So when we are developing this application, we need to really know that what really happened in each of the nodes, right? Because it's not, the accuracy is multiplicative. So let's say one of the nodes doesn't have a good accuracy, so your whole, it doesn't depend like which state of the art model that you're using. Your tool calling is not good, or you're not able to do certain things correctly, so then the whole application will tear apart. So over here, you can see, you can just go and debug in one of each of the actions that it took, and then you can see, okay, what really happened in each of the actions. And then you can also see in each of these actions where actually my accuracy dip is happening, so that you can go back again, do that iterative thing. So that iterative things really helps you to prototype your application really fast, because what people are generally doing is they have this one version, have some team internally and just look into it, and that really slows down your development, because what you're essentially is doing it is you are spending 80% of your time not actually developing, but reviewing your outputs, right? So that removes that hurdle from there. In the end, if you want to have, let's say, again, human reviews are important, can do that in the end, right? But once you achieve very high accuracy on the platform, then you're pretty sure that it is covering a lot of mostly of all the cases that you have. I think we have a few questions. I think Jay asked, like, does a platform let you compare models? So yeah, I think over here also you can compare all the chains. But I think we have an experimentation feature in the main develop thing as well, where you can just run an experimentation. I think we don't have some runs over here, but you can run, let's say, 50 models or a bunch of parameters that you want to use, and then see, okay, which model is actually working the best for you. For example, I think one of the things that Rishav showed was choosing a winner, right? So for me, maybe the cost factor is the highest. I can have 1 or 2 seconds low latency, and I can bear with few accuracy metric less, but it doesn't matter for me. It's like it's 98 or 96, but I want the accuracy to be low, because it's it doesn't connect. That's what I want. Then you can just choose whatever the highest thing that is important to you, and then you can land up on the things which works best for you. Yeah, I think Rishabh, we can continue.
Also, one more thing, like one major problem that we face these days is we do not know, like all these, when I talk about smarter evaluations, then like how do we interpret these evaluations? We do not know where things are going wrong, right? So, a very important thing that comes here is like explanation for each of these cases where I get to know like where exactly the model is going wrong, where exactly the component that I have there is going wrong. So here you can see that you can localize the errors to exactly the sentences in your context where it shows that this is the possible cause of the error. So it does a root cause analysis and also gives you a very coherent explanation of things you might want to improve on. So these become your indicators for where you should act potentially improve your model, where you get real time feedback or understanding of what really you need to improve in your data to get most bang for the buck when you're deploying your AI applications.
Yeah.
So we covered like doing the experimentation where we started from data, then building a demo for the end user application, and finally like doing certain experimentations with it where we showed like 4 different runs. But now that as I said that in my case that V4 version was doing the best. So what you should do now is to probably in real time when you're putting your model in production, you want to have like real time monitoring over your system. So same here in observe, what you can do is in real time you can have those evals configured as I already showed in the case of these different experiments, and in real time you will get these evaluations to see where things are going wrong, and you can keep monitoring and keep giving feedback to improve upon things.
Correct. I think Priyam also asked this question, like, can I integrate in the things that I have right now? So I think the notebook that we have over there, we can just have one line of code. We use open telemetry standards. So any existing code that you have will support this. So you don't need to add anything, any support or run additional infra to increase your cost. So I think it will support everything that you have in existing in code. Yeah.
Okay. With that, I would like to sum up the presentation, and I want to emphasize on a few key takeaways that you should have. One of them, firstly, should be continuous testing because these generative AI models are very non deterministic in nature. We need to have continuous evaluation of to identify the issues and where things are going wrong. Secondly, we need to move away from only evaluating things like accuracy. We need to have more robust evaluation framework that include things like fairness, safety, helps us evaluate each and every component that goes into making an AI application, and of course, not forgetting your key performance indicators for the business. Right, we need to do a lot of adversarial testing or red teaming for these AI applications so that we can test a bunch of different scenarios before these models and AI applications are put into production. So we can already have a lot of instruments in place or handle those cases before the end users get to experience our AI application. And finally, we of course at this day and age need real time monitoring of our AI application because even after all this, there is no guarantee. We can control it to some level, but them being non-deterministic in nature, the final output can look like anything. So we definitely do need a real-time monitoring system in place to check how our AI systems are performing.
Yeah.
With that, I would like to open up the floor for question and answers and like get to know more from your experiences. Feel free to ask anything about evaluations, AI, or in general about the platform as well.
I think we can take the first thing. Like, are you guys adding? I think Parth asked, like, are you guys adding your evaluation stack to keep up with new types of evaluation that might comes up? Maybe you can shed some light, Rishabh, on that because we recently I think we are, doing work with very big audio labs right now and evaluating this. So can you add something on that as well?
Can you repeat the question once?
Yeah. So basically, the answer was like the landscape is keep on changing. So are you keep on adding these new type of evaluations?
Yeah, so we are also like as we talk to many customers, right? We also figure out what sort of evaluations are important for them, and if certain evaluations that are coming across as widely needed in the community, we keep researching on those and we keep adding them to our platform, supporting like various modalities, different workflows, so that it becomes really easy for users to come and just configure these evals for their system. And of course, on top of that, we allow users to do their own custom evaluation because like these key performance indicators can vary across different businesses. So we give them the liberty to configure their own evals in a very easy way, so that their personal use cases are also covered.
Yeah. I think the next question is, can your system be customized for my use case or like for a specific industry? I think I can add on that. So we were working with one of the largest marketing companies. So they were, I think they went on and they researched about a lot of evals, uh, very use case, and they were very, sure that any of the tools won't be helpful for their evals and they have to build something in-house. Uh, so once they tried on our platform, right? So there all the things basically that you saw, right? The whole chain. So they wanted to evaluate very specific things in that whole chain. And so yes, basically you can evaluate anything that is there in your top of your mind. You can just write your own rule prompt. So you don't have to write very fancy long prompts, evaluation, etc., etc. You just have to write something like, let's say, how good is my summarization? That's all. And the whole thing understand your context. For example, okay, this is a sales call, right? What do I need to have in the sales call? And or it then judges on all those criteria and gives you the best evaluation that is possible. The other thing is very cost effective. So I think it's like really penny. So if you're calling any other LLM as a judge, so it will cost you a fortune because what you end up doing is you are multiplying your cost by 10 or 20%, because end of the day you are calling one more LLM for all your answers, right? So, but for us, it's really 1% or even 0.05%, because the models that we have is are only proprietary models. So you can just, and it's really cheap. So you can just evaluate in at a pennies of cost.
Yeah, and just to add, like LLMS judges are also not very consistent, right? For some, text, they might give certain responses. For similar text, they might give something else. And to get consistent evaluations out of these LLMS judges, there are like many research papers out on it, how they have like biases towards like different regions of the scale. They would prefer a certain category over all other categories. So all these are open-ended questions which are still not answered. So configuring LLM as judges comes with its own challenges and added costs, of course.
Yeah. I think the next question is, are these evals cloud-based or can be deployed on-prem? So that has been the ask for a lot of guys, right? So basically, they want to run it on-prem on their cloud for maybe the financial use case, or medical use case, or they have all this info that they want to deploy, or when they are let's say AI company, and they want to evaluate that, and they are not like end user and customers. So at there they want to protect their customer data and don't want to have it gone out of their cloud. So for them, it can be just deployed on their prem. Nothing goes out of their cluster, and it can be just sit anywhere in-house prem. Yeah. The other thing, does ChatGPT use LLMs like does just feature area use LLMs like ChatGPT or Claude for evaluating, or it's based on perplexity scoring mechanism? So yeah, that's the latter part of it. We actually distilled a lot of models in house. to make it work on all these evals. And we initially use all these models to see and generate a lot of synthetic data. But all the models that we have, it's very proprietary to us only. Yeah.
I think in a way we have built like evaluation experts. So configuring LLM as judges is also again very inconsistent. But the evaluation experts that we have built here with SLMs and like other models that we have distilled, they are specifically tuned for these purposes. So the cost is much lesser. The evaluations that we get is much lesser. We do a lot of context expansion on the different use cases that we get in. All of these come into play to help us get like a really holistic evaluation and consistent evaluations for the different evals that we have in place.
Yeah. I think next question from Salil is, at the beginning of the presentation, you mentioned that even AI models from big companies like Google and Meta have failed miserably. But given their vast resources, I'm sure that they must have tested these models extensively. So pretty much, I think this has been asked like a lot of times. So it cannot be an excuse for you not evaluating your models, right? Say they failed, so we might also, we cannot do it. So they have, and they have been testing. We talk to a lot of deep mind researchers team, right? So how they evaluate these models, what are the things that in place, right? But a lot of times what happens is you don't see a lot of things coming in to your plate, and it's so diverse that the first thing that they want to do is jailbreaking. If you remember the first time that the first version of ChatGPT, when it came, it was hallucinating it as hell. So what those team did is they actually had all these guardrails in place, all these evaluations in place. Even Claude have all these in place, so they know that where they are failing, and the next iteration of these product came. They know that where they need to not give wrong answers. So it's actually about how fast that you can understand that where you are failing, and how fast can fix those things, right? So what happened was Google took a long time to plug the plug and turn off that. But these companies are very fast in identifying the errors or jailbreaks that are having, and then put guardrails on that. So they just stop. They don't retrain the model, but they put guardrails on top of that. So the model behavior is stopped at that point itself, and it doesn't perform wrong.
Just
Anything
to
that.
add that, Nikhil, uh, so this AI landscape is evolving rapidly in the last couple of years. So these companies also tend to have like a blind spot, and there is no playbook to follow, right? Because there are very diverse cases on how these are being deployed and used, and you cannot, of course, predict for all sorts of cases and the user entries that you're going to get. And when we use like traditional evaluation methods, they start failing, which is probably the case what happened with these bigger companies. They did, of course, do a bunch of holistic evaluation, but they did not imagine on how these things would scale up and how these things would be used by the end user, causing their systems to fail. So that is why I said we need smarter evaluations which can evolve with the evolving pace of the generative models itself.
Yeah. I think just randomly I'll just ask questions now because not like UI. So I think one of the guys asked, "Can do you have SDKs?" So we have separate SDKs for our evals endpoints. So if you don't want to have anything in place, you just want to use evals, define your evals, and just monitor that. So yes, we have APIs for that. It works the same way. We use ChatGPT APIs or SDKs, so you can just do that. Uh, yeah. And maybe the next question, does this work with TensorFlow? Yes, it works with any type of textual model that you want to evaluate. So it just depends upon like what is the input and what is the output, and just defining what do you want to evaluate. So it can do that. Can you evaluate videos? Not right now. We can evaluate images. So if you can have a bunch of images like frame wise, can you send it? And we can do that. But we are multimodal in that sense, means we can have images, we can have text we can have, or we are doing right now POCs with very biggest labs of audios in the world. So we have right now audio support. It's if you want to reach out and you want to test it, let us know. We'll give you a beta version of that. But we support end-to-end multimodal scenarios. Uh, and Rishav and his team is actually searching on that. So yeah, there is a lot of people also coming on that. How does your model know the context of our product? Okay, so this is important because what it does is it knows what your input and your output is, right? And then it guesses from that scenario what is your use cases, because it is getting the input of your data. A lot of times what user do is, so say this, my use case is very custom, let's say medical use case or some scenario like that. They can add knowledge base information to that, and that's how we know, okay, what does the data look like. And if it's not a general world scenario, if we don't know anything about it, it's an internal scenario, then that's how we get to know, okay, what's the data looks like. How much time will it take to integrate the tool with our product? Actually, just one line of code, right? So it will take you, I think, 2-3 minutes to go through the and sign up, and then get the keys, and then integrate into your use case. So yeah.
I think one of the things that we are focused on is how to make it as simple as possible for the user so that there is no added learning curve here and you still get, the most robust evaluations possible.
Exactly. One of the things is it free to use? Yeah, it's free to use. We have kept a free version so that your team can go and try that out. Just sign up right now, and maybe you can start using it. One is like, okay, text to SQL. So we have been, this was, I mean, the initial one of the use cases that we solved. So where marketing teams and sales team uh, in enterprise wanted to develop basically a tool, a dashboard, where they had like their team can come in and just type something like, okay, but how many leads do I have, right? And to just go through that and gives you the number of leads that they have, right? Okay, and how does the things look? So basically, it's like a chatbot, text to SQL, and goes into make some SQL queries, get the data, make sense out of it, and then return. So we were able to evaluate all those things in a very general format. Um, we it was not performing. So one of the things that I think we didn't show you was you can actually go back, Rishabh. You can actually add feedbacks to the evals, right? So we also need AI. It's not 100% accurate. So one of the things that you can go back, if you see something which is failing, you can just add a feedback. So let's say to any use case that you have that you think, and it learns from that human feedback, and then the next time you run that, it takes that feedback into account, and then it won't make that mistake again. Thanks a lot, Ben, for your kind words. Yeah, and I think someone asked, like, I have the same question, that evaluating chatbots are one thing, but how can I make sure the RAG-based SQL agent used by me is reliable? As the generated response is a code, so that it should not only be correct synthetically but logically also. What solution can you offer on that? I think you can reach out to the team once on that, and if you want to have a deep dive on that, we can surely do it, because this is one of the core things that we actually did initially, text to SQL use cases. As I mentioned, a lot of enterprises are using it right now. It is, the SQL is more like a tool calling as well. So what tool that I need to use, that is one scenario. Then they call that tool, maybe which DB do I need to use. Then they make a SQL query on that. So not just that, the thing that you mentioned, like, is my SQL correct? Then I'm making that query and getting that, and adding additional layer of protection of data. For example, hierarchy should be maintained in data. So like a normal employee cannot ask few questions about the data. which it is not supposed to. So, or having all the guardrails in place and everything. So yeah, it supports everything. We can have an offline discussion in detail about that. It's
Also,
like,
a case study on our website for a real life use case.
yeah. How can we get access? So just go on futureagi.com and just sign up. Sorry. Yeah. Yeah, I think that's all. I think we answered a lot of questions today. We keep on organizing these events. We have a podcast session as well. We also run a Slack community where I think we just launched it a couple of weeks back. I think you guys can just go on that and we can continue the conversation over there that you have. We can interact with the whole team that we have and ask. And if you have any questions accessing the product, it's if it fails. Just let us know. We'll be on our toes to do whatever that we can. Yeah. Thanks a lot, guys, and thanks a lot again for taking time out for the session. I hope it was very helpful for you, and you'll take something away from the session. And thanks a lot, team, for organizing this. Yeah, thank you, guys.
Nikhil, can we take two more questions, please? We have it in the Q&A section.
Okay. Our data is very confidential. Do you give on cloud solution? I think we answered that yes. We have been working with even private cloud providers so that we can even deploy on that. So if not just three clouds, basically AWS, not just hyperscalers. So anything that you have, it can be deployed. Why are you better than Galileo? Very great question. I think you can test the product once, right? Because though their evaluations are kind of limited to very RAG and text-based use cases. What we have done is we have created a comprehensive set of evaluation metric, which is not just limited to very few use cases, and we go on and beyond letting you know and localize all these errors. We have actually worked with at scale as like one day, for example, one day of million of data points can come in. I think one of the very biggest customers had that need, we want 500 million data point to be ingested. So I think evaluations, so you can only know the difference when you try that. I would really appreciate to try that. And I would really take your criticism as well, whatever that you have. But yeah. Do, how do I join the community? Just scan the QR code, and you can just or the Slack and you can join it.
I think with that we can close.
Yeah.
Thank you everyone for tuning in. My favorite thing to do is to connect with all AI developers. So feel free to reach out to us on the Slack community or catch us on LinkedIn or anywhere else. And I'll be happy, or anyone from the team will be happy to chat with you and discuss this further.
Thank you. Bye. Take care.